My coworker filed an HR complaint because I flirted with the guy she had a crush on, who was actually my boyfriend of 3 years. She humiliated herself so badly she quit 2 weeks later. I graduated college with a degree in accounting and couldn't find a job for 5 months. I applied to over 40 places. I got a few interviews, but nothing stuck. I was starting to think my degree was a $38,000 piece of paper that was going to collect dust in my desk drawer forever. My boyfriend Leo and I had been together for 3 years at that point, and his mom Francine owned a mid-size insurance company with about 60 employees. One night at dinner, Francine mentioned they had an opening in their accounting department and that I should apply. I immediately said no. I told her I didn't want special treatment. She put her fork down and looked at me and said there wouldn't be any. She said I'd go through the same interview process as everyone else, and that if the department head didn't think I was qualified, I wouldn't get the job. Leo backed her up. He said his mom ran the company like a business, not a family favor factory. So I applied. I interviewed with the department head for 45 minutes and got the job based on my resume and my answers. Francine told me afterward she didn't sit in on the interview, didn't say a word to anyone about who I was, and didn't even mention my name to the hiring team. I asked her and Leo to keep it that way permanently. I didn't want to be the girl who got the job because she was dating the owner's son. Leo worked there too. He ran the operations side of the company from his own office on the second floor. I was on the first floor with the rest of the accounting team. We agreed that at work we'd be professional. No pet names, no hand-holding, no lunch dates in the break room. If we talked, it would be about work, and we'd keep it short. For the first couple of months, it worked perfectly. Nobody knew. I showed up, did my job, and went home. My team liked me. My manager Dawson said I was picking things up fast. Everything was fine. Then I started noticing something. The women on my floor talked about Leo constantly. Not in a professional way. In a he's so cute, I wonder if he's single way. There was a group of 3 in particular. Heather, Jess, and Naomi. They sat near me, and every time Leo walked through the first floor to check on something, they'd whisper and giggle like we were in high school. Heather was the worst. She'd find any excuse to go to the second floor. She volunteered for every task that required going to operations. She brought Leo coffee once and told everyone in the break room that he smiled at her and said thanks. She talked about that smile for 2 days. Jess was more subtle, but she'd always fix her hair when Leo came downstairs. Naomi straight up told me during lunch that she was going to ask Leo out before the company holiday party. I just nodded and ate my food. I didn't say anything because what was I supposed to say? That's my boyfriend? I made a choice to keep it private and I was sticking to it. The problem started when Leo came to my desk one afternoon to ask me about a billing number for a client file. Normal work stuff. He stood at my desk for maybe 3 minutes. We talked about the file. He said thanks and walked away. That was it. The next morning, Heather asked me if Leo and I knew each other outside of work. I said no. She said it seemed like he was really comfortable talking to me. I told her he was just asking about a file. She said okay, but the way she said it had a tone. Like she didn't believe me but was giving me one chance to come clean. After that, Leo came to my desk 2 more times in the same week because we were working on the same account. Both times were quick. Both times were professional. But Heather started making comments. She told Jess and Naomi that I was finding excuses to talk to Leo. She said I was always looking at him when he walked by. I wasn't. I was at my desk doing my job. The following week, Naomi stopped eating lunch with me. Jess moved her things to a different section of the desk cluster so she wasn't sitting next to me anymore. Heather started being cold. Short answers. No eye contact. If I asked a question about a file, she'd respond with one word or just point at her screen. Then during a break, she said it was kind of obvious that I was trying to get Leo's attention and that it was unprofessional. I told her I was doing my job and that Leo came to me about work. She said sure. After that, things escalated fast. The 3 of them started going to Dawson with complaints about me. Heather told him I was spending too much time away from my desk. I wasn't. Jess told him I was making personal calls during work hours. I don't even take personal calls at work. Naomi told him I was being disruptive in the office. Dawson pulled me aside and told me he'd gotten some complaints but said he hadn't noticed any problems himself. He said he just wanted to make me aware. I said thank you and went back to my desk. But Heather wasn't satisfied with that. She went above Dawson. She went straight to HR. She filed a formal written complaint saying I was engaging in inappropriate behavior with a senior member of the company and that it was creating a hostile and uncomfortable work environment. She meant Leo. She filed an HR complaint because I talked to my own boyfriend at work about a billing number. HR called me in the next morning. A woman named Dana sat me down in a small conference room and told me there was a complaint about my conduct with Leo. She asked me directly if there was anything going on between us. I looked at her and I had a choice. Keep the secret and fight this alone or end it right there. I took a breath and just said it. Leo is my boyfriend. We've been together for 3 years. His mother Francine is the one who told me about the job opening. Dana blinked. Like actually blinked in a way where I could tell her brain was catching up to what I just said. Her whole face shifted. She leaned back in her chair and looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Why wasn't this disclosed when you were hired? She asked. I told her the truth. I said I wanted to earn my spot without anyone treating me different. I told her Francine didn't sit in on my interview, didn't talk to anyone about me, and that I went through the same process as every other applicant. Dana asked if I had anything to back that up. I pulled out my phone and showed her text messages between me and Leo going back over 3 years. Date stamps, conversations, pictures. I showed her messages from before I even applied where Francine told me about the opening, and I said I didn't want any handouts. Dana scrolled through a few of them and her face got tight. Not in a mad way. More like she was putting something together in her head that she really didn't like. She set my phone down and picked up the folder with Heather's complaint. She opened it and started reading parts out loud. It says here that you were, quote, engaging in flirtatious and potentially predatory behavior toward a senior employee to gain workplace advantages. I almost laughed. Predatory behavior. Toward my own boyfriend. Because he came to my desk and asked about a billing number. Dana closed the folder and said she'd need to speak with Leo and Francine separately. She said this changed the context completely, but she still had to follow the process. I said I understood, and I left. When I got back to my desk, Heather was watching. How'd it go? She asked with this smile on her face. Sweet on the surface, but I could see what was underneath it. She thought I just sat through some kind of punishment. I looked her right in the face and said, great actually. Her smile flickered. She didn't know what to do with that answer. Within the hour, Leo got called to HR, then Francine. By 4:30, I had an email from Dana. The complaint was found to be without merit. The matter was closed. No further action against me. The next morning, Francine called me into her office. She said she respected what I tried to do, keeping things private, but going forward, the relationship needed to be formally disclosed for legal and policy reasons. She pulled out a form, and I filled it out right there. Then she told me something that changed how I saw the whole situation. Heather's complaint wasn't the first problem she's caused. She filed a complaint about another woman on the operations team 8 months ago. Similar situation. Said the woman was being unprofessional around a male supervisor. That complaint was also unfounded. This wasn't about Leo. This wasn't even about me. This was a pattern. Heather saw something she wanted, decided someone else was in her way, and used the system to try to get rid of them. Francine said Heather's file was being reviewed. After that meeting, Dawson pulled me into a small conference room and closed the door. I owe you an apology, he said. I wasn't expecting that. He kept going. I should have pushed back harder when they were coming to me with those complaints. I knew something didn't add up. 3 women come to me in the same week with issues about the same new hire, and none of them can give me a specific example. That should have been a red flag, and I let it slide because I didn't want to get in the middle of it. That was wrong. I told him I appreciated that, and that I understood. He looked relieved for a second, then his face changed. I want you to know, Heather came to me yesterday asking if you were getting fired. I told her that wasn't happening. She didn't take it well. She filed that complaint because she genuinely thought it would get me fired. She walked into Dawson's office the day after I went to HR and asked him point blank if I was being let go, like she was checking on a delivery she ordered, but Heather wasn't done. 2 days later, Dana called me back to HR. I sat down in the same chair I was really starting to hate, and she looked at me with an expression that told me this wasn't going to be quick. I'm going to be straight with you, she said. Heather filed a second complaint this morning. I just stared at her. For a second, I honestly thought I misheard her. A second complaint, I repeated. Dana nodded. This one is different from the first. She's not claiming you behaved inappropriately with Leo. This time she's claiming the first complaint was mishandled, and that you received preferential treatment because of a personal connection to the company owner. She'd somehow figured out I had a relationship to Francine, but she still didn't know about Leo. She was using the connection to say the whole process was rigged. Dana told me she personally didn't believe there was substance to it, but that a formal complaint had been filed and she was required to investigate it. I could feel my frustration rising. I did everything right. I kept things private. When the first complaint got filed, I told the truth. I disclosed the relationship. I filled out the form. And now Heather was using the one thing I couldn't change. The fact that my boyfriend's mom owned the company, to make it look like I was getting protected. I asked if Heather could just keep filing complaints until one stuck. Dana paused and chose her words carefully. There are limits, and we're getting close to them, but I have to follow procedure. While the investigation was going on, Heather launched a whisper campaign across the floor. She'd catch people in the break room and the hallway saying things like, "It's crazy how some people get protected around here," and "I just think it's unfair when someone has connections and the rest of us are out here actually earning our spots." She never used my name, but she didn't have to. People started pulling back from me. A guy from Claims who always said good morning just stopped. A woman from the front desk who used to chat with me started giving me one-word answers. I walked into the break room one afternoon and 2 women were standing near the microwave. One of them said, "I heard she only got the job because she knows the owner." The other one nodded and said, "That explains why she never gets in trouble." They both went silent the second they saw me. I filled my water bottle and walked out without a word. Then Jess came to my desk. She had this look of rehearsed concern on her face. "I just want you to know, I don't have anything against you personally," she said. I waited. "But Heather's not wrong that it looks weird. You should think about whether this job is really the right fit." I stared at her. "Are you telling me to quit?" She shrugged. "I'm just saying it might be easier for everyone. Easier for everyone. Not easier for me. Easier for everyone." Like my presence was the problem. Like the solution to Heather filing false complaints and running a smear campaign against me was for me to just disappear and make it convenient for all of them. I didn't respond. I just looked at her until she got uncomfortable enough to walk away. That night I told Leo everything. The whispers, the cold shoulders, Jess telling me to quit. He was sitting on the couch when I walked in, and he could tell from my face that it was bad. I sat down next to him and just started talking. He listened without interrupting. He didn't try to fix it while I was still talking. He just let me get it all out. When I was done, his jaw was tight and his hands were pressed together between his knees. I could tell he was angry. Really angry. But he was holding it in because he knew I needed to talk, not listen to him vent. "This isn't fair to you," he said. His voice was low and steady, but I could hear what was underneath it. "You shouldn't have to fight this hard to keep a job you earned." I agreed with him. I went through the same interview process as everyone else. I showed up every day and did my work and got good feedback. I didn't ask for anything special and I didn't get anything special. The only thing I did wrong was fall in love with someone whose mom happened to own the company, and I tried to handle it the most responsible way I could. I looked at him and said, "I'm not quitting. That's what she wants." He looked at me for a long moment and then nodded. He didn't argue. He didn't try to talk me out of it or into it. He just accepted it because he knew me well enough to know I meant it. The next day, I sat down at my desk and decided I was done playing defense. I opened a blank document and wrote down every single thing that had happened since I started. Every false claim to Dawson, every cold comment from Heather, every lie, dates, times, names, details. 3 full pages of a timeline showing a clear pattern of targeted harassment. I included the information Francine gave me about Heather's previous unfounded complaint against the operations team woman. I emailed the whole thing to Dana with screenshots that afternoon. A few days later, Dana called me in. "The second complaint has been dismissed," she said. Then she kept going. "But there's more to it than that. Heather's pattern of behavior has triggered a formal review of her conduct. The first complaint against you was baseless. The second was retaliatory. And when we pulled her file, we found the complaint she filed against another employee last year, which was also unfounded. 3 strikes. 3 different women, 3 fake complaints, all from the same person, all built on the same kind of jealousy dressed up as professional concern. Dana told me Heather was being placed on a formal written warning and a performance improvement plan with a behavioral component. One more incident, one more false complaint, one more act of retaliation, and she'd be terminated. I thanked Dana, shook her hand, and walked out. When I pushed through the door to the first floor, Heather was standing near the front desk, not sitting at her station, just standing there like she'd been waiting for me to come back. The second she saw me come through that door, she started walking. not to her desk, not to the break room, straight toward me, right through the middle of the open office floor where everyone could see. She stopped about 4 feet in front of me, and her voice came out loud enough that nobody on the floor missed it. Are you happy now? You got your boyfriend's mommy to protect you, and now I'm the one in trouble? I stopped walking. I didn't step back. I didn't look away. I just stood there and let her words hang in the air. Every single person on the floor was watching. Keyboards stopped clicking. Phone calls got put on hold. The whole room went still like someone had pressed pause. Heather kept going, her voice getting louder and shakier at the same time. You think nobody knows? You've been playing this whole office, coming in here acting like you're just some normal new hire when you're sleeping with the owner's son. I didn't yell. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice or step forward or do any of the things she probably expected me to do. I just looked at her calmly and said, yes, Leo is my boyfriend. We've been together for 3 years. I asked him and his mother to keep it private because I wanted to earn my place here on my own. I didn't flirt with him at work. I didn't chase him. Every conversation you saw between us was about work. You filed a complaint against me for talking to my own boyfriend about a billing number. The floor was dead silent. The kind of quiet where you can hear the air coming through the vents and the faint buzz of the overhead lights. Nobody moved. Nobody whispered. Heather's face went full red from her neck to her forehead. The kind of red you can't hide or play off no matter how hard you try. Jess had her hand over her mouth 3 desks away. Naomi was staring at the floor like she wanted it to open up and swallow her. Heather tried to spin it. Her voice was different now, less angry and more desperate. So you lied to all of us? You sat there and let me and Naomi and Jess talk about him and you didn't say a single word? You were laughing at us the whole time. I shook my head slowly. I wasn't laughing at anyone. I was doing my job. You're the one who spent months gossiping, filing false complaints, and trying to get me fired because a man you had a crush on didn't pay attention to you. That's not my fault, Heather. Someone on the far side of the room let out a low whistle. Not a mocking whistle. More like the sound someone makes when they just watched something land so hard there's nothing else to say. Heather looked around the room searching for one ally, one face on her side, one person nodding along or looking at me with suspicion. She didn't find one. Not one single person. The 2 women from the break room who had been whispering about me were looking at their desks. The guy from Claims who stopped saying good morning to me was staring at his screen with his jaw clenched. Jess still had her hand over her mouth. Naomi still hadn't looked up from the floor. Every single person on that floor had just watched Heather scream at me in public, and then watched me calmly explain that she filed an HR complaint against me for talking to my own boyfriend. There was no angle, no spin, no version of this where she was the victim. She did this to herself in front of everyone with her own words and her own voice, and her own decision to walk up to me in the middle of the office instead of sitting down and keeping quiet. Then the front door opened. Francine walked in from an off-site meeting with her bag over one shoulder and her keys still in her hand. She took 3 steps inside and stopped. She looked at the silence, the frozen room, Heather's red face, me standing calm in the middle of it all. Is there a problem here? Francine said. Heather opened her mouth, then she closed it. She looked at Francine. She looked at me. She looked at the floor. Then she turned around and walked back to her desk without saying a word. She sat down in her chair and didn't speak to anyone for the rest of the day. The next morning, she put in her 2 weeks notice. She sent it to Dawson and to HR, and she didn't give a reason. She didn't need to. Everyone knew. She spent those 2 weeks barely speaking. She came in, did the minimum, and left. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at most people. Whatever version of herself she had built up in that office, the loyal, hardworking employee who was just looking out for everyone, that was gone now. Everyone had seen who she really was, and she couldn't pretend anymore. 2 days after she gave notice, Jess found me in the break room. I was pouring coffee and she walked in and stood there for a second like she was working up the nerve to talk. Then she said, I owe you an apology. I should have asked you what was going on instead of just believing what Heather was saying. I'm sorry. I looked at her and I could tell she meant it. She wasn't performing. She wasn't trying to get on my good side because the power had shifted. She looked genuinely embarrassed about the whole thing. I told her I appreciated her saying that and that I didn't hold any grudges. She nodded and left, and things between us were fine after that. Not best friends, but fine. Naomi never said anything. She never apologized, never brought it up, never acknowledged it out loud, but she stopped avoiding me, started eating in the break room when I was there again. She'd nod at me in the hallway. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I didn't need a speech from her. I just needed the nonsense to stop, and it did. Heather finished her 2 weeks and left without a goodbye email or a farewell lunch. She just packed her desk on her last day and walked out. I heard she told someone in accounting she was leaving because the company had changed, and she didn't feel supported anymore. Even at the end, she couldn't own what she did. She had to make it someone else's fault. I kept my job. I kept my boyfriend. Francine never treated me different after the disclosure. Dawson went back to being a good manager. People found out about Leo and me, and most of them didn't care. Heather did all of this to herself, every single piece of it. I didn't expose her. I didn't plan any revenge. All I did was tell the truth when I was forced to, and the truth did the rest. She filed complaints that were lies and turned coworkers against me over nothing, and tried to get me fired because the guy she liked was already taken. And when it all collapsed, she stood in the middle of the office and made sure every person in the building watched it happen. I just went back to my desk and opened my files.